The host who knew two more.
I almost didn't notice it, but once I did, I couldn't stop shaking. My girlfriend and I booked an Airbnb in Savannah, Georgia. A historic townhouse in the old district. Brick exterior, creaky floors, the whole southern Gothic aesthetic. We were celebrating our anniversary. The host, a woman named Diane, had a warm listing description and a profile photo that made her look like someone's favorite aunt. 4.29 stars. Over 200 reviews. She met us at the door. That should have been my first sign. Most hosts don't do that anymore. They text you a code and leave you to it. But Diane was there on the front step when we pulled up, smiling wide, holding a small basket of local snacks, like we were guests at a bed and breakfast. She gave us a full tour, talked constantly, pointed out which floorboards creaked, which faucet handle ran hot, which window stuck. She knew that house the way you only know a place you've lived in 4 years. When I asked how long she'd been hosting, she said, "Oh, a little while." Then she laughed like I'd told a joke. We had dinner out, came back, and settled in. The house was genuinely beautiful. High ceilings, antique furniture, a clawfoot tub. My girlfriend fell asleep early. I stayed up reading in the front room. Around midnight, I got up to get a glass of water, and I noticed something I hadn't seen during the tour. Above the kitchen door frame, angled almost imperceptibly downward, there was a small black circle about the size of a shirt button mounted in the wood trim. I stood on a chair and looked closer. It was a camera. A tiny, flush-mounted wide-angle lens. I checked the living room. Another one, hidden in the face of a decorative wall clock. I went upstairs. In the hallway outside the bedroom, there was a third, tucked into the smoke detector housing, which I only noticed because one of the screws was slightly stripped and sitting at an angle like it had been opened recently. 3 cameras. None of them disclosed in the listing. I woke my girlfriend up. We grabbed our bags, and we left within 10 minutes. I was shaking so badly I could barely type out the incident report on the Airbnb app while she drove. What followed was almost worse than the discovery itself. When Airbnb's trust and safety team reached out to confirm our report, they told me the account was flagged, but that they could immediately verify ownership of the property because the listing had been created under a name that didn't match local property records. Diane, or whoever she actually was, had never been the real host. She had taken over someone else's inactive listing, redirected the communications, and was operating out of a house she either rented under false pretenses or had access to through other means. The Savannah Police Department opened a case. I gave a recorded statement. I don't know how it resolved because the detective stopped returning my calls after about 2 months. What I do know is that we weren't the first guests she'd done this to. While reading through forums later, I found 2 other accounts from people who had stayed in Savannah rentals and noticed hidden cameras. Same description. Of the host, same basket of snacks at the door, same overwhelming friendliness that felt rehearsed. She knew which floorboards creaked. She knew which windows stuck. She knew that house because she'd been using it as a stage for a long time. And somewhere out there, she's probably standing on someone else's front step right now, holding a basket, smiling that same wide smile, waiting to give the tour.
Checkout time.
My brother and I booked a house in the Florida Keys for a fishing trip. The listing said the host, a guy named Paul, wouldn't be on the property. It was a lie. The place was perfect for us waterfront. Private dock. Just the 2 of us for 4 nights. It was a new listing with no reviews, but the price was right and the photos looked legit. We figured, why not? We got there on a Thursday. The house was exactly as described. An older wood frame house on stilts, smelling of salt water and motor oil. A little rowboat was tied to the dock. It felt lived in, comfortable. The first 2 nights were great. We fished all day, cooked our catch for dinner, and slept like logs. But Saturday night, that's when everything changed. I woke up around 3 in the morning to the sound of footsteps on the deck below the house. Not the porch, but the ground-level deck, right under our bedroom. They were slow, heavy, deliberate steps moving toward the outside staircase. I thought it was an animal at first, an iguana or a raccoon, but the rhythm was too human. The footsteps stopped right at the bottom of the stairs. I shook my brother awake. We both just lay there, holding our breath. For what felt like an eternity, There was nothing. Then, a single, sharp creak from the staircase. Then another. Someone was coming up, slowly, stopping to listen. My brother grabbed the flashlight from the nightstand while I snatched the fillet knife we'd left on the kitchen counter. We stood on either side of the front door, hearts pounding. Then we saw the handle turn. We had left it unlocked. A stupid, simple mistake. The door swung open, and my brother flicked on the flashlight. In the doorway stood a man in his 60s, deeply tanned with silver hair, wearing a faded fishing shirt. He looked right at us, with no surprise, no fear at all. He looked like he belonged there. He just said, "I came to check on the place." That was it. That was his only explanation. After calling the sheriff and having a very long, very weird conversation with the rental company, we found out the truth. Paul, the owner, had never left. He was living in a storage shed at the back of the property, hidden from the road and the main house. He'd been there the whole time. He watched us arrive, watched us fish, and apparently watched us sleep. Then, at 3 a.m, he decided it was time to let himself into the house he had rented to us. The sheriff told us they couldn't arrest him. Technically, it was his property, and the local rental laws were a gray area. The company took the listing down and gave us a full refund, but we didn't care. We packed our stuff and left that morning, driving straight to Miami without looking back. But here's the detail that still keeps me up at night. While I was packing, my brother went to check out the shed. He told me later there was a small window that faced our house, and right in front of that window was a folding chair. Next to the chair, on the floor, was a pair of binoculars. Paul hadn't just been there. He'd been watching us from the very beginning, patiently waiting in his dark little shed for 4 nights before he finally decided to come inside. Thanks for listening, and stay safe out there.
The room that wasn't on the listing.
Something was off the moment I walked through the front door. I just couldn't figure out what it was yet. I'd booked the place 3 weeks in advance, a standalone cabin rental outside Asheville, North Carolina. The listing looked perfect. Exposed wood beams, a stone fireplace, wraparound porch, 5-star reviews. I was going alone for a long weekend, just to decompress. No phone calls, no obligations, just me, the mountains, and silence. The host, a man named Gerald who communicated only through the app and never in full sentences, left a lockbox on the front porch with a key inside. Standard stuff. I let myself in around 7 in the evening, dragged my bag inside, and started exploring the place. The kitchen was clean. The living room matched the photos. The main bedroom looked fine, but at the far end of a short hallway, behind a door I initially mistook for a closet, there was a second room. It wasn't in the listing. No photos, no mention of it. Just a plain wooden door with a round brass handle. I opened it. The room was small, maybe 10 by 10. No windows. A bare mattress on the floor, and on the wall above it, dozens of photographs pinned in uneven rows. My first thought was that a previous guest had left them. Some kind of art project. Maybe, but I stepped closer, and the air left my lungs. The photos were all taken outside. Trees, a gravel driveway, a porch, the same porch I had just walked across 20 minutes ago. And in nearly every single photo, there was a person standing near the tree line. Distant, partially obscured, always facing the cabin. I didn't recognize the person. I couldn't make out a face, but the photos were old. The timestamps printed in the corner of a few of them were from the past 4 months. I locked both doors, pushed a chair under the main bedroom handle, and tried to message Gerald through the app. He never responded. I sat in the dark with my back against the wall, listening to the forest outside, telling myself the sounds I was hearing were just wind. Around 2 in the morning, the motion sensor light on the porch clicked on. I hadn't gone outside. There was no breeze strong enough to trigger it. I pulled back the curtain just far enough to see the porch and the tree line beyond it, lit faintly by that yellow security light. There was someone standing at the edge of the trees. I called 911. The dispatcher kept me on the line. By the time officers arrived, 17 minutes later, which felt like several lifetimes, whoever had been standing there was gone. The deputies walked the perimeter, found a narrow footpath worn into the ground behind the tree line, and told me it looked like it had been used regularly. One of the officers came back inside with me to look at the photo room. He went quiet for a long time, standing in the doorway, staring at those pinned photographs. Then he pulled out his radio. I drove home that night. Didn't sleep until Sunday. I reported the listing to Airbnb, and within a week, it had been taken down. I never heard from Gerald. I still think about those photos sometimes. Dozens of them, different seasons, different weather, same figure near the trees, which means whoever it was had been watching that cabin, watching the guests inside it for a long, long time before I ever showed up. And the thing that keeps me awake some nights isn't what I saw. It is wondering how many of those photos had already been taken of me before I ever found that room.
Subscribe and maybe sleep with the lights on tonight. Because what's coming next? I genuinely wish I'd never found.